From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Suni Gray. Candidates for Sunday's presidential election in Brazil will face off in their last televised debate late on Thursday. The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has said an underhand campaign by the media is largely responsible for the advance in the polls of the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. He said abusive messages were being spread on social media and then published as fake news. The latest poll by Ibope on Wednesday showed Haddad creeping up to 23% behind Bolsonaro's 32%.
We're going to keep our positive approach, but now the time has also come to defend ourselves in this final stretch, because it's very serious what's happening on WhatsApp. We estimate that millions of messages were sent with very offensive content on one platform or another, and some of the messages have been picked up and published as fake news by certain media.
The third-place candidate in the poll, Ciro Gomes, has accused the frontrunner, Jair Bolsonaro, of lying about his health. Gomes says the far-right candidate used a false medical report to avoid taking part in the last televised debate. Bolsonaro, who spent much of the campaign in hospital after being stabbed on September 6th, he was discharged last Saturday, but said he wasn't well enough to take part in the debate on Sunday. Joining us now live from Brasilia is Sabrina Fernandes. She teaches sociology at the university there and is also an active figure on the Brazilian left. Thank you, Sabrina, for your time and for joining us. So there's a lot of discussion over which way the opinion polls are pointing, but there seems to be many Brazilian voters who haven't made up their mind or aren't convinced. How do you read the mood?
I think the situation is one where Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right candidate, will be going to the second round. It's something that we estimate since last year that he would be going to the second round anyway. The difference is that when Lula was still possibly a candidate, Lula would easily win over Jair Bolsonaro in the first round and in the second round anyway. So now we have a more difficult situation in Brazil.
Now, João Pedro Stadley of the Landless Movement has said that there's no social base for fascism in Brazil and that Bolsonaro can't get much beyond his 30%. Do you agree with him?
I actually disagree with him because we've been seeing in many different parts of the country acts of violence, loss of threats happening as well. Part of the Jair Bolsonaro social base is empowered. Of course, we can't mistake his social base by his electorate. A lot of people who are voting for Jair Bolsonaro are actually people who would have voted for Lula otherwise. There are people who are really disappointed with the economic crisis in Brazil, the way the coup happened in Brazil, the Temer government has been handling things. So they are disappointed and they think that Bolsonaro stands for change.
Now, if it does go to a second round, do you think that Haddad and the PT will pick up the votes of the center and of the left?
Haddad and the PT have a difficulty from picking up the votes from the center because of the anti-PT sentiment that's very much empowered by the WhatsApp current, these fake news that Haddad was talking about. This is something that has empowered anti-PT sentiment in Brazil over decades now. So this is a problem, but they will definitely pick up all of the votes from the left. The left will be united against Bolsonaro because it's part of a fight against fascism in Brazil as well. So I have no doubt about that element.
Now, Sabrina, when Bolsonaro got attacked, we're showing some video of that on September 6th. I remember someone commenting to me on Twitter saying that he would definitely win the election. How has that attack, you think, played with his campaign? Because he has been in hospital for the entire time since then. How has it affected his campaign?
The attack actually affected the campaign in the sense that he wasn't doing very well in the debates. So he was actually considering not going to the debates at all. And with the attack by being in the hospital and then being at home ill, trying to recover, he hasn't been in the debate. So that hasn't really hurt his performance. The reason that people thought that he was definitely going to win is because they thought that with the attack, a lot of people have sympathy for him and then he will rise in the polls. But his rejection rate is actually quite high. It's actually higher than the rate of rejection against Haddad. So Bolsonaro is sort of still stable, and we have hopes that we might be able to shift the tide when it comes to the second round.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for chatting with us. We really appreciate your insight on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Social movements in Uruguay have created a committee to support democracy in Brazil and the release of the former president, Lula da Silva. Activists, political figures and intellectuals attended an event to launch the committee. This body will also try to raise awareness about the threats from neoliberal policies to the peoples of Latin America and the rights they have won. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has addressed a concern from a member of the opposition that the master plan for the redevelopment of Heroes Park and downtown Kingston would involve the demolition of the existing architecture.
In fact, the master plan proposes the redevelopment of the entire area around the park. The development proposal has considered the accommodation of government ministries, departments and agencies to the east, west and south of the National Heroes Park, as well as the further upgrade of the adjoining residential neighborhoods, which include Almantown.
On Wednesday, Dominica's Prime Minister toured the sites of several proposed hotels in the area of Portsmouth. Prime Minister Skerritt says the 3 hotels currently under construction would help to diversify the country's economy and add value to a tourism industry still recovering from the devastating effects of Hurricane Maria in 2017. The Venezuelan government is seeking to negotiate set prices for a number of products and services as part of its attempts to stabilize the economy. These include private schools and pharmacies, but the old problem of speculation persists.
The shutters are down, not because of shortage, but as a sign that there is no meat on the shelves.
They are nuts. They want to kill us Venezuelans. If I'm agreeing the prices, then I assume everything has been checked, how much the profit and loss is. And they have to sell it like that, but they put the prices at 90, and you can't find it anywhere, not even half a kilo of meat.
Beef is one of the 50 products whose price was agreed between the government and the private sector. But pork, if you can find it, like other animal proteins, doesn't have a controlled price.
What can you do? No one knows why it's going up. They supposedly agreed on prices like butter, and it turns out that butter arrives next week at 240, and the agreed price was 65.
So who is putting it up?
It's the Polar Company, because they are the ones who are selling it. The wholesalers do what they want. It is anarchy. They don't care about anyone else. There's a lot of speculation, so to avoid problems, it's easier just not to sell it.
On this corner, they sell eggs. Apparently, they don't have any. But they do. Only they sell them secretly at non-agreed prices. You are not going to sell eggs?
Tomorrow at 6 a.m., because eggs sells fast, because people buy eggs quickly, I sold them before, when they were in control. The problem is the price control, because if they were free of the price, then the eggs reappear. Just like chicken and meat, because all of that has disappeared.
It seems that the businessmen's commitments with the government are not being kept. For other economists, speculation is the main issue.
Price agreements are a valid tool. If you look at Argentina, Macri's government eliminated the price agreements of the previous government, and now inflation has increased. So there's a call to reintroduce price agreements. I think that these agreements are a valid tool. The conditions are there for them to be implemented, and if they don't comply, it is for purely speculative reasons.
The private school sector has also signed an agreement with the government to control enrollment fees.
This is to ensure agreed prices for school tuition, to ensure the right to education for the sake of our children.
The government's efforts continue. Now it is time to listen to the pharmaceutical sector, whose production costs are being evaluated.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
with developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud, amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. Mexico's President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has spoken by phone with U.S. President Donald Trump about the new trade deal to replace NAFTA. López Obrador said they spoke about using the agreement to boost investment in Mexico and Central America. They agreed that economic development in the region could help to reduce migration towards the United States. On Sunday, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico agreed to a new trade deal now known as the USMCA.
We
talk about the importance of the initial signing of this agreement, which in our case gives us economic certainty, allows for confidence in investment in the medium and long term. So it was a good agreement. That's what we talk about, and we also talk about a next step, that we can agree on joint investment.
Peru's former president Alberto Fujimori has been taken to a local hospital. This after the Supreme Court overturned his pardon and ordered his arrest. He will be returning to prison, where he was serving a 25-year sentence for human rights abuses. The court found grounds to uphold a civil appeal against the pardon granted last December by then-President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Fujimori's pardon and release led to widespread protests, and Kuczynski was forced to resign 2 months later. Fujimori supporters have clashed with police officers outside the former president's residence. They reportedly shouted at and pushed officers who arrived to execute a search of the house. Meanwhile, Fujimori's daughter Keiko says she will appeal the court's decision. She believes her father has the right to be pardoned.
Today is one of the saddest days of our lives. It is extremely painful to know a judge from our country has taken away my father's freedom, saying that because he's not dying, he has no right to a humanitarian pardon.
And relatives of those killed during the former Peruvian president Alberto Fujimori's term in office say justice has finally been served. They say they feel at peace with the judge's order to once again detain the former president.
We have always been respectful of the judiciary and the decisions of its members. We have also respected the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and its resolutions. Today, the resolution made by Judge Núñez Julca regarding Alberto Fujimori has given us peace knowing we were heard. We feel the judiciary respected us and understood the need to serve justice to the victims by ordering the arrests of one of the responsibles for the disappearance and death of our relatives.
And the order for Fujimori's arrest came just before the deadline for Congress to approve 4 anti-corruption reforms. Early on Thursday, lawmakers voted in favor of the reforms demanded by the President Martin Vizcarra. They will now be submitted to a national referendum on December 9th. Last month, President Vizcarra threatened to shut down Congress if it didn't approve the reform to the judicial system and other institutions. Women in Bolivia are developing a plan to fight sexism and promote greater equality.
More than a dozen women organizations are organizing regional referendums to consolidate a national alliance with different sectors.
Women have to remain together more than ever. We want to consolidate a national alliance.
We want to reach unity to support a process of change. Social organizations and women have to accompany change in the country. We will support our president, Evo Morales.
Women organizations are building a program with 7 main topics to then socialize it with the government. They will ask for a bigger political participation and a fight against sexism.
It is very important to recognize the knowledge of women. They are the ones who guarantee, for example, food security.
There is still a lot of discriminations towards women. They are not allowed to work in some cases or occupy management posts.
Women have to be appointed for 50% of official posts. They are demanding this to be a reality.
Women occupy 51% of seats in the Senate, but we are still missing women in mayor's offices. From 339 municipalities, only 35 women are mayors. By 2020, we need at least 150 women as mayors.
In previous governments, women couldn't own lands. The state is also promoting free housing for women.
Several social and political organizations in Argentina have held a feminist forum in opposition to a G20 women's meeting. The forum was presented as a parallel to the Women 20 meeting, which proposes to define a woman's agenda.
With the slogan, "Not in our name," demonstrators unanimously rejected the topics proposed in the G20 Women Group. They say the topics deny and cover up the structural causes of inequality, exclusion and forced subordination.
Talking about work inclusion, they propose entrepreneurship, but we say that stands very far away from our experiences of social and popular economy. At the same time, they think the future of jobs will happen in a context of austerity, adjustments and labour reforms, yet they invite representatives from transnationals to speak and not rural women who suffer under these actions.
According to social leader Zulema Aguirre, the Women 20 meeting is a farce.
They take away our rights. When we organize ourselves to defend our rights, they criminalize us, kidnap us, jail us and judge us. These women will never think about how we can live better lives. That's why we need to come here to tell them the meeting is a lie.
In the protest, they also condemn the consequences that neoliberal politics promoted by the G20 create, which in Argentina are implemented by the Macri administration.
We understand that the International Monetary Fund has found in Mauricio Macri its main executor. Through the G20, they are applying adjustment policies against workers.
Women 20 talks about women empowerment, but we are seeing how they continue to sink into gender inequality since Macrismo arrived.
This feminist group, which was created by the need to give a voice to lesbian, bisexual, non-binary, trans women and transvestites, bring up topics that are not present in the Women 20 meeting.
Our migrant colleagues have a strong voice, and they are not included in the women. We want to display our organisation to show we are talking about activism that has no frontiers. It is not possible that migratory politics are not included. We are thinking about a world which is not dominated by capitalism.
Activists from the Feminist Forum against the G20 say that the future will be feminist or there will be none. That is why they will continue their fight on October the 30th and November the 1st, when the Summit of the Americas will take place in Argentina.
We'll take a short break now. World News is next.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The United States will continue to tighten sanctions on Iran despite a ruling by the International Court of Justice. The U.S. Ambassador for Disarmament in Geneva, Robert Wood, said Washington feels as if Iran was trying to politicize the issue of sanctions. On Wednesday, the ICJ ordered the U.S. to lift sanctions against Iran on humanitarian goods to stop Iran's involvement in the Syrian conflict. Washington intends to impose further sanctions in November, aiming specifically at the country's oil sector.
We are there to fight terrorism, and we will stay there to fight terrorism as long as it threatens the United States. Now, one of our biggest concerns is Iran's operating in Syria. And we want to see Iran no longer operate in Syria, because Iran is, as everyone here knows, is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism around the world.
Indonesian officials said that the death toll has climbed to over 1,400, but that an estimated 1,000 people are still missing. Rescue teams fear that time is running out as authorities have set a deadline of Friday for finding anyone still alive. The United Nations Humanitarian Office said around 200,000 people are in urgent need of food and medical care, and included in that number is tens of thousands of children. And thousands of people are fleeing their homes in southwest Cameroon amid fears of violence during the October 7 general elections. In recent months, unrest in the Anglophone regions has escalated. Fighting between English-speaking regions, security forces and armed groups has intensified. Separatists have threatened to block roads during the election. Opposition candidates are looking to unseat the President Paul Biya, who's been in power for 36 years.
There's a panic around the people because security cannot be anywhere at any time. So that is why we are uncertain of the future. We don't know what may happen. So that is why it brings fear in the hearts of people.
Romanians will vote this weekend in a referendum that aims to deny same-sex couples the right to marry. Romania's constitution currently defines marriage as a union between spouses. The poll will decide whether the Constitution can characterize marriage as explicitly between a man and a woman. Human rights groups have criticized the referendum for breaching human rights standards and discriminating against homosexuals.
Heavily, and it's easy to feel this kind of violence, which, thank God, for now is just verbal, and it's a type of symbolic, spiritual violence exerted by the Church.
And now let's look at what else is happening around the world.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is about to arrive in India to hold bilateral talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They will be discussing deals on defense, trade, nuclear energy, and space technology. One of the most significant outcomes of the current visit is expected to be India's purchase of the S-400 air defense missile system worth more than $5 billion. The meeting comes 5 months after the two leaders last met in Russia. Italian Mayor Domenico Luciano, a pro-migrant politician, has appeared in court for allegedly favoring illegal migration. He has been accused of organizing marriages of convenience for immigration purposes. The mayor of the South Italian town of Riace has been under house arrest by the finance police since Tuesday. Luciano made headlines for integrating thousands of refugees and thus revitalizing declining rural population.
Let's see. If they let me speak, I will. I don't have anything to hide or not to say. Everything I know, I will tell them. I will say goodbye.
At least 7 Turkish soldiers have been killed in a bomb attack allegedly by militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. 3 other soldiers have also been injured in the strike. The explosion happened close to the town of Gerkes, located in a province mostly populated by the Kurdish. State media reported the soldiers were on their way to carry out operations against Kurdish fighters.
Activists and artists in the Central African Republic have taken to theater to raise awareness about impunity in the country. In their first play, they explained how the Special Criminal Court functions. The group will tour the country to try to educate people about human rights violations, genocide and war crimes. The legal system in the CAR remains weak. In the past, hundreds of prisoners have escaped in large-scale jailbreaks, and only 8 out of 35 prisons function.
It's theater. Theater is a form of diversion, and in the end, it's also education. So that's what we are trying to do with the language of our country, so all Central Africans can easily understand. That's to say, a language that allows easy comprehension and ease in understanding the message we are delivering.
We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday.